Wanted to mention the Spellholds Modern 1K that's going to be happening on June 4th. If you are interested in the event, there is a Facebook link in the description of this video below. Hello everyone and welcome to another round of Tuesday Night Legacy, where we showcase Magic's most powerful formats. My name is Eugene and I'll be your commentator for this round 2 from May 17th. Tonight we have James playing a blue-white control deck versus Thomas playing an aggro tribal Merfolk deck. James using a veritable panoply of cards to make his control deck here, using all sorts of different things. He's got Supreme Verdict and different forces, counter spells up the wazoo, a Teferi, the Wandering Emperor, and some Swords to Plowshares to deal with problematic permanents. Has some pretty fun win conditions, as we saw the Jeskai earlier. He's also even got a one of Outlaw's Merriment to give him incremental advantage as turns go on. Whereas on the right, we have Thomas playing a tribal Merfolk deck. This is going to use the power of all of these different types of Merfolk that have been printed over time, mostly banking on the Lord of Atlantis and Master of the Pearl Trident, giving all of the creatures +1/+1 and Island Walk. There has been a new Merfolk that was printed in Modern Horizons, which works just like the card Spreading Seas. Tideshaper can come in and change one of your opponent's lands into an island, therefore turning on all of these Island Walk effects and making all of your creatures unblockable. Also has a fun little effect where it runs 4 Chalice of the Voids and 4 Cavernous Souls, so you can drop your Chalice on 1 or 2, completely blocking out your opponent's ability to cantrip, but you can still use your Caverns to cast your Merfolk, and they'll still come into play because they can't be countered. So a pretty interesting matchup we have here. Let's get into the action. We have James starting out on the play here, starting just with a basic island. James has a ton of basics in his deck. Actually only has the one of Prairie Stream and one of Sacred Foundry as non-basics, besides like things like Otawara and Mystic Sanctuary. Alright, so we're seeing Thomas play that Tideshaper on 1 mana, so because he did not kick it, it doesn't have the ability, but it does have that static ability of being a 1 mana 2/2, since James does control an island. Seeing a Brainstorm from James, getting a Plains into play, and a Prismatic Ending to get rid of that Tideshaper. Decides he doesn't want to deal with a 2/2 for 1 mana. These Wastelands going to be kind of useless this game, but you only need 1 basic to turn, or 1 colorless to do that kicker, so now that Plains is an island, shutting James off from white here. So James is going to be in the tank for a little bit here. I do not think that he has another white source readily available. So we see him use the Scalding Tarn to go and get the blue. He did have access to that Prairie Stream, but staring down that Wasteland across the field probably felt pretty bad to go ahead and play straight into the Wasteland. We're seeing a Narset come down. That's going to prevent Thomas from doing any cantripping here, any extra card draw. And it is almost always going to find James some effect, some card. It looks like it found him a Prismatic Ending here by ticking down the Narset. It's also just a great card to have on the field, although it is going to take 2 damage from this Tideshaper here if Thomas decides to attack with it. Seeing an Otawara come down. 2 mana for a Chalice of the Void on 1. Thomas employing that strategy, trying to take James off of his 1 mana spells. In this case, it would be Ponder, Brainstorm, Swords, and Pyroblast. So, looks like Narset was binned for a Narset, which found a Narset. So 3 Narsets used within a matter of seconds here. Just attacking for 2, bringing that Narset down to 1. Thomas having 2 Wastelands in play. Not super useful. Seeing that 3rd Narset deployed, another -2 is going to go and get a Dress Down. Flashing in a Harbinger of the Tides, I think this card is called. Yep. So if he wanted to well, he did cast it at instant speed, so he did pay that 4 mana for it. Could have bounced a creature if James had one, but he mostly just wanted more damage in play so that he could get rid of that Narset in one attack instead of leaving it on the field. Now, I did check with a judge earlier. If this dress down is played, the Tide Shaper ability will still be active, as the ability says on it. It's a triggered ability with a condition. So we do see the dress down come into play here at the end of Thomas's turn, so it's going to stick around for all of James's turn. But because that specific Tide Shaper is still in play, that Plains is still an island as far as that ability is concerned. So James did have to go and get a third Plains here, casting that Supreme Verdict to get rid of those creatures. Now he has his Plains back finally. We see a Brazen Borrower just getting flashed in there at instant speed. That second Cavern of Souls that's on the field is actually on Rogue. So with the Brazen Borrower being a fairy rogue, is uncounterable. We're seeing another Tide Shaper come into play. Not as good with 3 Plains in play, but still limiting the mana cost here. James has a lot of mana. Going to use that Prismatic Vista. Go and grab another basic. Grabbing the basic Mountain here. One of basic Mountain. It's got access to 6 mana here. Could use that Prismatic Ending to get rid of that Chalice if he needed to, by paying 2 mana into it with the Converge. Seeing 4 mana. Yes, the Outlaw's Merriment. This is an enchantment that at the beginning of the upkeep randomly gives him one of these creatures. Looks like we saw a Force of Will out of Thomas trying to catch it, but a Force of Will right back is going to allow it to resolve. So this is going to give James access to win conditions here. Each turn getting another creature. Each creature a little bit different, but with James on the back burner here, things are a little bit tough. Looks like he's already down to 1. So he did get that human that gets to shoot anything when it comes into play, getting rid of the Brazen Borrower. Although this Lord of Atlantis makes these 2 creatures unblockable. Or I guess the only one creature unblockable gets each other, all Merfolk get +1/+1 and gain Island Walk. So it does give it to itself. I did not realize that. And we're seeing attacks and blocks. I don't really... This Lord of Atlantis must have been eroded here to be other Merfolk, because he wouldn't have been able to declare that as a blocker otherwise. Alright, we're seeing that Prismatic Ending being deployed. This Outlaw here getting a +1/+1 counter from the Wandering Emperor that came in and exiled the Tide Shaper last turn. Sorry, I missed that. So Thomas paying 2. Another Brazen Borrower. This is going to be the Petty Theft effect, which is going to get rid of that token. Seeing a Swords to Plowshares for that Lord of Atlantis, clearing Thomas's board. This being James's turn, he gets the random 1/2 again. Decides that he was going to make the Samurai, decided against it, and just pluses up his boy and attacks with the haste guy. 3 mana there is going to be the Brazen Borrower. James tries to Force of Will it, but didn't realize that it was cast with that Cavern of Souls, and he decides to scoop it to Thomas for going to game 2. See a Silvergill Adept coming into play here. Gets to draw an extra card. All you have to do is reveal a Merfolk, and you can just pay 2 for it. So nice card draw, and allowing your opponent to have a little bit of knowledge of your hand isn't a bad thing, especially if you're just going to be playing the card the next turn. We're seeing a Plains Cycled Eternal Dragon, or a Timeless Dragon, getting an extra Plains to hand, and allowing for potential creature in a couple turns here. I think that was a Narset. that tried to come down, or yeah, or for 3 mana. I'm not entirely certain which Planeswalker that was, but it did catch a Force of Negation. Ooh, seeing a pretty good Merfolk come down. The True Name Nemesis. So protection from target player. Only answer to this is either a Terminus or a Supreme Verdict. A Brainstorm for James. Not seeing any lands. Passing it right back. So representing 5 damage. This is a 4-turn clock on Thomas's side if nothing else happens. Seeing a Brazen Borrower in his hand. Have some reactionary spells. Probably wants to get at least... He might not want to put anything else in play because he doesn't want to play into a Supreme Verdict here. So we saw 5 damage come in. Really deciding if he's going to tap this 2 mana. Does put the Tide Shaper in. Choosing one of the planes. And a Swords to Plowshares is going to catch the Silvergill Adept. An interesting target. I may have done the Tide Shaper personally, but getting the Adept out of there is still bringing the clock back down. Maybe he knew that he had the Supreme Verdict in hand, so he was just using it to slow the clock down. Taking another 5 damage here if he doesn't have a response. James really in the tank about this one. Has access to the Prismatic Vista, which represents red, white, or blue mana. So it's going to be blue mana here. If he has a 2 blue spell. I'm not entirely certain. Oh, it's a Snapcaster Mage. So Snapcaster targeting Swords to Plowshares, I'm guessing. Or it could be Brainstorm. No, it can't be Brainstorm. Only has the white mana open, so must be going for Swords. Oh, just putting the snap in play. Blocking, trading, taking 3. And letting the flashback fizzle. Going to see a Ponder here on James's turn. He's got to figure out an answer to this True Name Nemesis or he's going to be dead in 3 turns. A very good card, even without equipment. It's like an unanswerable Delver of Secrets. Decides that he didn't like any of those cards on top. Decides to shuffle it up. Draw that card. Only has access... Okay, so a Scalding Tarn gets another blue, 4 mana, Supreme Verdict. So he probably had the Supreme Verdict in hand and just was in an awkward position to kind of fire it off. He didn't want to get extra white mana there. Reading the Otawara. Oh, it's a Teferi Time Raveler, that original Planeswalker. So we're seeing a flashed in Brazen Borrower after the Supreme Verdict, which is meaning that Thomas doesn't lose any of his tempo here. And getting another attack in. A Chalice on 1. We're seeing a Plane Cycle and a Timeless Dragon, and then a Merfolk Trickster, which is going to actually tap down that dragon that he brought in here. The Trickster, it loses all abilities too. And then he's just going to untap and swing for 5, and that'll be the game. So Thomas showing us that Merfolk does indeed have chops against control decks sometimes. Those instant speed flash creatures getting in there and being able to attack for next turn with a semi-style haste and gets around a lot of those sorcery speed removal spells. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If this is your first time to the channel, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you to all who have subscribed. We just passed 250 subscribers, and we wouldn't be here without you. And thanks as always to Spellhold Games for allowing us to use their space to record our videos. Our next video on the channel is going to be Naya Maverick versus Mono Red Painter. We'll see you then.